did she let a stranger mark her to escape her mate, and woke up as the Alpha King's queen. The wind howled through the jagged peaks of the northern mountains, carrying whispers of old curses and older wars. The forest below swayed like a restless sea, shadows curling between the ancient trees. In their wild and untamed world, Lyra ran. Her feet barely touched the ground as she darted over roots and stones, heart hammering against her ribs. Every step she took was measured by fear, every breath a prayer to the gods she no longer knew. She had one chance, one sliver of hope to escape the man who was meant to be her mate, a warrior bound to her by blood and old magic, whose love had grown into something cruel. Every time he touched her, every time his eyes lingered too long, she felt the weight of a chain she could not break. It was not that she hated him. She had once thought she could love him, but now she understood the truth. Love should never feel like a cage. Branches tore her cloak, leaves clinging to her hair, but she did not stop, not even when the moon rose high, pale and silver, casting light across the tangled forest. She had made her choice. She would not be bound. Not today. Not ever. And then, as if summoned by her desperation, he appeared. The stranger came from the shadows, stepping forward without a sound, his presence commanding even in silence. His cloak was black as midnight, and his eyes glimmered with something impossible to name, a mixture of danger, sorrow, and a strange magnetic pull. "You seek freedom," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper, yet it carried through the trees as clearly as a bell. Lyra froze. There was no one else for miles. How? Did he know? Her breath caught in her throat. "Yes," she said, her voice trembling. I cannot stay. I cannot him." She stopped herself, unwilling to speak his name aloud. The stranger nodded once. "Freedom comes at a price." Breaths. "Are you willing to pay it?" Lyra's mind raced. What could the cost be? Gold? Service? Her soul? She hesitated, but only for a heartbeat. "Yes," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "I will pay." The stranger extended his hand, palm upward, and in it was a small blade. The metal gleamed silver in the moonlight, etched with runes she did not recognize. "A mark," he said. "Once it is placed, your path is set. You will be free of him, but never truly free of what binds you." Lyra looked down at the blade, her heart pounding. She knew what it meant to bear a mark. In her clan, marks were sacred, a symbol of ownership, a bond of life intertwined with another. But she had no choice. Her life had become unbearable. She swallowed her fear. "Do it," she said. The stranger's eyes softened, a fraction, and he took her hand. The ritual was simple, swift, and painful. The silver blade traced a line along her wrist, and a hot, bright pain surged through her. She gasped, gripping the nearest tree. Shadows danced across the forest floor as the runes burned into her skin, glowing faintly before fading. When it was done, the stranger stepped back. Breaths. Bast, bast. This is not being brought. Bast, 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 bast. Go and survive. Lyra's legs shook, but she did not question him. She ran again, the wind whipping her cloak behind her, the forest blurring around her. The mark throbbed faintly under her skin, a pulse she could feel in her chest. She had no idea what it meant, only that it had saved her from the life she had fled. Hours later, she awoke. Or perhaps she had never truly slept. The chamber she found herself in was cold, vast, and unfamiliar. Stone walls rose high around her, etched with patterns of dragons and wolves, their eyes seeming to follow her every movement. Torches flickered along the walls, casting long, dancing shadows. She sat up, heart racing, and saw him. Not the stranger, the Alpha King. Rydian, the name whispered through the corridors of her mind like the echo of a storm. Tall, imposing, with hair as dark as the midnight sky and eyes that gleamed like polished steel. He stood near the doorway, his posture relaxed yet commanding, every movement a demonstration of power.
"You are awake," he said, his voice deep, resonant.
I wondered how long it would take. Lyra froze. Confusion and fear clashed inside her. Where am I?" she stammered. "You are in my keep," Rydian replied, stepping closer. His gaze swept over her with an intensity that made her knees weaken. "And you are my queen." "Queen?"
I am no one's queen."
Rydian's eyes narrowed slightly, though the faintest curve of amusement tugged at his lips. "Ah, but you are. The mark chose you, and now it belongs to me." She looked down at her wrist. The mark glowed faintly beneath her skin, a pulse of light and power that seemed to respond to his presence. Her stomach twisted. Somehow the stranger's mark had linked her to this man, this king she had never met. I do not understand," she whispered. "You will," Rydian said simply. "Soon enough you will." Bylara's mind swirled. She had escaped one master, only to find herself in the hands of another. The Alpha King was no stranger to power, and she could feel it radiating from him like fire. Every instinct told her to flee, yet every fiber of her being trembled at the thought of moving. Breath. "You cannot leave," he added, as if reading her mind. "Not yet. The mark binds you to me." Panic rose in her chest. "I didn't choose you." She stopped, realizing her words sounded pitiful even to herself. She had fought so hard for freedom, and now it seemed that freedom had delivered her into another chain. Rydian tilted his head, studying her like one might study a storm. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "but sometimes chains protect us from greater storms."
You will see.
Her hands clenched at her sides, trying to steady herself. She did not know whether to be afraid or furious, or something else, something she could not yet name. The days that followed were a blur of courtly rituals and strange, unspoken rules. Lyra was adorned in garments she had never imagined wearing, silk and velvet that brushed her skin like the touch of winter wind. Servants whispered as she passed, guards bowed, and all eyes turned toward her as if she were the axis of the world. Yet she felt nothing but isolation. She was surrounded by people, yet utterly alone. And always, beneath her skin, the mark throbbed, a quiet heartbeat that reminded her she belonged to someone she barely understood. Rydian observed her with careful scrutiny, never intrusive but always present. He did not speak much at first, allowing her to acclimate, to adjust, to fight or resist as she pleased. But in the quiet moments when she caught him alone in the shadowed corridors, his gaze would meet hers, and in those eyes she saw not cruelty, but a storm of curiosity and something deeper, a longing she could not name. One night, unable to sleep, she wandered the halls of the keep. The moonlight spilled through the tall windows, painting the floor with silver. She traced the lines of the carvings on the walls, dragons and wolves entwined in eternal struggle. A shadow moved behind her. Pain. She spun, heart racing, and there he was, Rydian, silent, as if he had materialized from the darkness itself.
You should not wander alone, he said, voice low, carrying that same weight that made her knees weak.
I cannot sleep, she admitted. This place, it is too strange, too vast. I feel as if I am a guest in my own life. He stepped closer, and for the first time he allowed his expression to soften. Perhaps, he said, because you are not merely a guest.
You are the queen, and queens never truly have rest.
Not until they understand their place, not until they understand themselves. Lyra shivered, unsure whether it was from fear, from the cold, or from the intensity of his gaze. Then if I do not understand, she whispered. Rydian's lips curved slightly. Then you will learn, he said, or you will falter trying. Either way, the mark will not let you go. Somehow, the mark was alive. It was more than pain, more than a binding. It was a heartbeat, a living thing inside her, responding to him, warning her, calling her. And she realized with a sudden, dizzying certainty that she had escaped one chain only to step willingly into another, far greater, far more powerful, far more dangerous. The night stretched on, silent but for the wind outside. Lyra sat by the tall window, staring at the mountains, and wondered what fate had wrought upon her. And then a soft, almost imperceptible glow rose from her wrist, the mark pulsing in time with her heartbeat, and perhaps in time with his. A chill ran down her spine, a mixture of fear and awe. She understood now that the story had only just begun. Freedom had a price, and destiny had chosen her for a role she could neither flee nor deny. Outside, the wind whispered her name. Inside, the mark pulsed like a secret heartbeat of power and longing. And somewhere in the shadows of the keep, the Alpha King watched, waiting, as if he had known all along. The keep was alive with whispers. Torches flickered against the cold stone walls, casting moving shadows that seemed to watch Lyra wherever she went. Every corridor felt like a maze, every corner a potential danger. She had learned quickly that in the court of the Alpha King, appearances were as deadly as blades. Since the night of her awakening, Rydian had maintained a watchful distance. He did not crowd her, but neither did he leave her entirely to her own devices. The mark on her wrist pulsed faintly whenever he drew near, a subtle reminder that their fates were bound together in ways she did not yet understand. Lyra had tried to study the keep, to learn its rhythm, its rules, its dangers. Servants bowed as she passed, eyes wide with fear and respect. Nobles whispered, curious and cautious, their words full of speculation. Every whisper reminded her she was the queen now, whether she wished it or not. Yet the mark also whispered to her in ways she could not name. It pulsed with life, almost like a heartbeat, a secret current of energy that thrummed beneath her skin. Sometimes it seemed to warn her of danger. Sometimes it seemed to sing with something else, desire, power, and an unspoken promise. She had not seen the stranger since that night in the forest, the one who had given her the mark.
She tried not to think of him. He had been her escape, and yet he had bound her to a fate far stranger than any she could have imagined.
The court gathered for the first time in the grand hall. The chamber was enormous, with vaulted ceilings and banners depicting dragons, wolves, and the sigils of the ruling clans. Nobles and warriors of every clan in the northern mountains had come, eyes fixed on the new queen. Lyra stood near the throne, her hands clasped tightly. Her heart pounded, but she held her chin high. Every eye was on her, judging, questioning, and measuring her worth. Rydian's presence was a shadow beside her, a calm storm, steady and unyielding. "Do you understand your role?" he asked quietly, his voice low, meant only for her. Lyra swallowed. I am... I am learning, she admitted. Then pay attention. Everything in this court has a meaning. Every word, every gesture, even every silence. The first challenge came quickly. A noble woman stepped forward, her eyes sharp and calculating. "The mark she bears is old magic," the woman said. "Does the queen truly understand its power? Has she been chosen only for convenience?" Lyra's pulse quickened. She knew the mark was powerful, but its true meaning eluded her. She straightened her spine, determined not to show fear. "I am learning," she said firmly. "And I will honor this mark, whatever it asks of me." Rydian's hand brushed lightly against hers, a grounding touch. The mark pulsed stronger, almost like it recognized his presence. Lyra felt a shiver run through her. The noble woman's lips pressed into a thin line, but she stepped back, and the court murmured among themselves. Lyra realized that power was not only in strength or magic, it was in courage, in knowing how to stand even when everyone doubted you. Later that night, Lyra wandered the castle garden, seeking a moment of quiet. The moon hung low in silver, reflecting off the black stone paths. She could hear the distant roar of wolves, their cries echoing across the mountains. A shadow moved among the trees. She tensed, ready to run or fight. But it was not a threat. It was him, Rydian.
"You wander alone," he said softly, stepping into the moonlight. His dark eyes held something unreadable, a mixture of curiosity and caution.
"I needed air," Lyra said. "I cannot think inside the walls." "They feel alive. And yet, I am alone."
He nodded, understanding. The walls are alive because so many have walked them before.
"And you are alone because no one else carries the mark you bear. It is a bond of power and danger. It does not forgive weakness, the faint glow of the mark pulsing softly." She did not know whether to fear it or embrace it.
I wish I could understand it, she admitted.
"You will," Rydian said, stepping closer. "But understanding takes time. And trust." She met his gaze, and something inside her stirred. Not fear, not desire, but recognition. It was as if the mark had drawn them together not by chance, but by design. And yet she did not know what fate awaited her. The next morning brought new challenges. Kalen appeared. Lyra had sensed him long before she saw him, a presence like a shadow at the edge of her thoughts. And now he was here, stepping from the forested edge of the castle grounds, eyes dark and unreadable. "You were marked," he said, his voice low, like a distant echo of the past. "I knew this would happen, but you must know, it is not over. The mark binds you, yes, but it also binds others to you. Patience. Choices will be demanded of you. Lives will depend on your actions." Strain. "And the heart will betray you first." Lyra's stomach twisted. She had hoped never to see him again. I do not understand," she said. "You saved me, but now I am here and you are here." "Why?" Kaelin's eyes flickered with something unreadable. Because the mark cannot be undone by time or distance. It is not a weapon, nor a gift. It is a test. And you are at its center. Before she could speak, Rydian stepped between them. Presence was a wall, strong and unyielding. You will not frighten her, he said quietly, but the edge in his voice was unmistakable. Kaelin inclined his head, almost in respect. I do not frighten her, he said. I warn her. And soon. Bas, the choice will be hers, whether she knows it or not. Rydian's gaze did not leave Lyra. She felt the pulse of the mark intensify under her skin, a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. She realized with a start that both men, one dark, one commanding, were drawn into her fate, tied by the same invisible thread. Days passed, filled with lessons of courtly etiquette and the responsibilities of power. Lyra learned quickly that being a queen was not only about ceremony, it was about reading people, understanding motives, and surviving subtle dangers that could strike without warning. Rydian remained near her always, sometimes silently observing, sometimes offering guidance with a light touch on her arm or a word in her ear. She began to understand that he was not merely a king, he was a protector, a strategist, and a man with a past heavier than the mountains around them. Yet Kaelin's presence lingered at the edges of her mind. She could not forget him, could not escape the knowledge that the mark still connected them, and that his warning had not been idle. The heart would betray her first, and then the court faced its first true test. A rival clan, one that had long coveted the northern mountains, arrived at the gates demanding tribute and threatening war. Rydian's warriors prepared for battle, but he did not send Lyra away. Instead, he placed a hand on her shoulder and said quietly, You must understand what it means to be queen. You are part of this, whether you wish it or not. Lyra's stomach turned. She was not a warrior, not trained in the arts of battle, yet she felt the weight of the crown and the mark upon her. 7. She nodded, swallowing fear and doubt, determined not to falter. In the night before the confrontation, she found herself alone with the mark glowing faintly under the moonlight. Its pulse was steady, insistent, almost alive. She traced it with her fingers, feeling the rhythm of life it carried. And then the whisper came again, faint, distant, and chilling. The mark chooses, but the heart defies. Soon one will claim you, and the other will die. Lyra froze, every nerve alive with fear and anticipation. She had escaped one fate only to awaken in another, far more complicated, far more dangerous. The Alpha King's gaze, the stranger's warning, the pulse beneath her skin, all of it coiled around her heart like a storm waiting to break. She did not know who she could trust. She did not know which choice would save her, and which would destroy her. But she knew one thing with certainty. Her life had changed forever. The chains of shadow and desire had wrapped themselves around her, and there was no turning back. The first light of dawn spilled over the jagged mountains, turning the peaks a fiery gold. Smoke curled from the distant forests, the result of scouting fires set by the rival clans. The northern valleys were quiet now, but only because war was gathering like a storm, ready to break. Lyra stood on the highest balcony of the keep, staring down at the soldiers assembling below. Their armor glinted in the sun, banners snapping in the wind. Her heart pounded, but not with fear this time, with purpose.
She had learned much since arriving at Rydian's keep. Courage, patience, and the subtle strength of power she had never known she possessed. Yet even as she watched the warriors, her thoughts were drawn to the mark. The faint glow beneath her skin pulsed with a rhythm that seemed almost alive, a silent drum calling to her, binding her to Rydian and to Kaelin in ways she could not yet fully understand. Her mind wandered to Kaelin. The stranger had appeared at the edge of the forests that morning, watching the preparations for war.
His eyes had held that same dark intensity, and though he had not spoken, she could feel the warning in his presence. This battle is not only for the land, it is for you. Ridian appeared behind her, silent as the shadows that haunted the keep. He did not touch her, but his presence was a shield in itself, a quiet promise of protection and power. "They are ready," he said, his voice low, steady. "And so must we be." Lyra turned to him. "Are you afraid?" she asked. Her words surprised her. Brass. She had never dared to ask him of his emotions before. Radian's eyes softened, just for a heartbeat. "But, fear is not weakness," he said. "It is the awareness that what we value can be taken." Courage is acting even with that fear. Lyra felt a strange warmth at his words. It was more than reassurance. It was trust, and it gave her strength. The battle began at midday. The rival clans attacked swiftly, using the thick forests as cover. Ridian's warriors met them with skill and ferocity, wolves and dragons emblazoned on their banners, moving as a single disciplined force. Lyra watched from the keep, heart racing, the mark pulsing under her skin like a second heartbeat. She could sense the danger before it even appeared, the mark giving her glimpses, a warning, a rhythm that guided her instincts. And then she saw him.
Colin, moving among the enemy, his presence striking fear and respect into the opposing forces.
He was not there to fight them directly, she realized. He had come for her. "Lyra!" Ridian's voice snapped her back to the moment. His eyes, sharp and commanding, scanned the battlefield. "Stay inside. The keep is the safest place for you." But she could not. The mark throbbed painfully, as though insisting she make a choice. To act, to move, to confront the storm of fate that had been set upon her. Sigh. She descended the balcony steps, her mind made up. If she was to be a queen, she would act as one, even if it terrified her. The ground trembled beneath the clash of swords and the roar of battle. Lyra moved among the wounded, offering what comfort she could, carrying water and blankets, whispering words of encouragement. Soldiers and servants alike stared at her with awe. They had never seen a queen move among them, exposed to danger, yet unafraid. From the corner of her eye, she saw Kalen again. He moved silently, approaching her through the chaos. "Lyra," he whispered, low enough that only she could hear. "Do you understand what the mark is doing to you? It is not just a bond. It is a choice waiting to be made. One of them will claim you completely. One will let you go, and the other will not survive." Her chest tightened. She had known the warning was serious, but hearing it now, amidst the chaos, it felt real, unavoidable. She glanced at Rydian across the field, his sword raised, leading the charge with unwavering authority. The Alpha King moved with a terrifying grace, each swing precise, each decision decisive. Kalen's gaze met hers, and for a moment the world narrowed to two paths, one toward freedom, one toward power and protection, both tied to the same mark, both impossible to ignore. Now hours passed. The rival clans began to retreat, battered and weary but not defeated. And the victory was partial, the threat still alive. Ridian returned to the keep, his armor scorched, his face smeared with blood and soot, yet his eyes sought Lyra's immediately. "You moved among them," he said quietly, the edge of anger hidden beneath concern. "Do you understand the danger?" Lyra met his gaze, unwavering. "I understand courage now," she said, "and I will not be kept as a prisoner behind walls." Ridian's expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained sharp. "You are more dangerous than the enemy," he said, half in warning, half in admiration. "And perhaps more remarkable." Kalen appeared again from the shadows of the castle entrance. "The mark grows stronger," he said. "Soon you will feel the full weight of its power. You must choose. Not now, perhaps, but soon. And know this: the choice will demand sacrifice." Lyra's heart ached. She had hoped that the battle would distract from the impossible dilemma of her life.
Bye.
Now, the moment of decision was closer, unavoidable. The days following the battle were tense.
The keep was fortified, scouts sent to monitor the enemy, and messages dispatched to allies. Lyra remained close to Rithian, studying him, observing the way he carried the weight of leadership with an ease that both terrified and fascinated her. And yet, Kalen remained at the edges of her thoughts, a shadow she could neither banish nor embrace. The stranger had given her freedom, yet his freedom came with knowledge she could not ignore. He knew the mark, the danger it represented, and the choice she would soon have to make. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky crimson, Lyra found herself in the castle gardens. The air was cool, scented with night-blooming flowers. She traced the mark on her wrist, feeling its pulse like a living thing, resonating with both fear and longing.
Rithian appeared silently, as if drawn by the same pulse.
"Do you feel it?" he asked, his voice quiet. "Yes, it is Bedin Dead-End Effor's bad bite, alive. And I do not understand it fully." "Nor do I," he admitted. "But I feel it with you. And if it calls for choice, then we will face it together." For the first time, Lyra saw vulnerability in him, hidden beneath the armor and command. He was not invincible, not unbreakable. He was human, as she was human. And that realization made the bond between them grow stronger, though she did not yet fully understand it. Kalen watched from the shadows, silent and unreadable. She felt the pull of his presence, the reminder that the mark was a tether, binding her fate not only to Rithian but also to the stranger who had given her the first taste of freedom. Night fell, and the keep was quiet except for the occasional guard. Lyra sat by the window staring at the mountains, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. She had escaped one fate only to awaken in another, faced with impossible choices, each path lined with danger, desire, and responsibility. The mark pulsed stronger now, almost as if impatient, demanding recognition, demanding action. She traced it with trembling fingers. She could feel the threads of connection, to Rithian, to Kalen, to the power she had never sought but now could not ignore. And then she heard it again, the whisper, faint, cold, and insistent.
The mark chooses, but the heart defies. Soon, one will claim you, and the other will die.
Her breath caught. The words were no longer distant. They were immediate, a prophecy that would shape every moment to come. Her mind raced. The battles, the choices, the danger, all seemed to converge on her. Rithian appeared behind her, hand resting lightly on the windowsill. "It is not too late," he said quietly. "Whatever comes, we face it together." "You are not alone." Kylan stepped into the moonlight, his expression unreadable, past. "And yet," he said softly, "you must decide. The mark cannot choose for you.
Only your heart can.
The night stretched endlessly, heavy with possibility and threat. She understood now that the next step she took would change everything. Not only for her, but for the two men bound to her by the mark, and for the kingdom itself. She closed her eyes, feeling the pulse beneath her skin, and knew that nothing would ever be the same. The chains of shadow and desire had tightened around her heart, and the storm of destiny had only just begun. The morning dawned pale and cold over the northern mountains. Mists curled around the jagged peaks. hiding valleys where battle had once raged. The keep, scarred by fire and sword, stood like a sentinel among the clouds, silent yet alive. Lyra stood on the highest balcony, the wind whipping her hair around her face. The mark pulsed faintly beneath her skin. A quiet rhythm now, less a warning and more a question. Who would claim her heart? Who would guide the path that had been written by fate and forged by magic? She did not have long to wonder. Both men, the Alpha King, Rydian, and the stranger who had given her the mark, Kaelin, were approaching. Rydian's presence was steady, commanding, full of the unshakable strength that had first drawn her attention. Kaelin moved like a shadow, dark, purposeful, and untamed. The mark flared suddenly, a surge of energy that made her fingers tingle. She understood with startling clarity that the choice could no longer be postponed. Whatever she decided would bind not only her heart but the fate of the kingdom and the lives of both men. The courtyard below was empty, save for the soldiers who watched from the safety of the walls. Lyra stepped forward, her bare feet brushing the cold stone, and faced the two men. Her chest tightened with a mixture of fear, longing, and resolve. Rydian spoke first, his voice steady, calm, yet carrying the weight of all he had endured. Breath.
Whatever choice you make, know this. You are not a prize. You are the queen, the woman I have come to trust, to respect, to care for.
I will not claim you by force, only by your heart. Past. Kaelin's voice was softer, a dark whisper that carried like the wind through the mountains. I gave you the mark to save you from a life of chains.
I never sought to bind you forever, but now you stand at the center of two fates, and your heart alone will decide which path survives.
Lyra's breath trembled. Her hands rose to touch the mark, feeling it pulse like a living heartbeat. The threads of magic within it were tangled, binding her to both men, yet urging her toward one. She felt the weight of responsibility heavier than any sword, yet the truth was clearer than she had ever known. She could not deny the bond she felt with one of them, nor the power that had shaped her journey. She thought of the Alpha King, Rydian, and all that he had shown her. Courage, strategy, patience, and the rarest kind of trust. He had never demanded her obedience beyond respect. Power, his strength was tempered with kindness, his power balanced by understanding. He had stood beside her in war, shielded her from danger, and yet never sought to control her heart. And then she thought of Kaelin, the stranger who had marked her. He had given her freedom when she had none, guiding her out of one cage only to place her in another of uncertainty and choice. His presence was fierce, compelling, untamed, a storm of danger and liberation that had haunted her thoughts since the forest. The mark flared brighter beneath her skin, a pulse that echoed the rhythm of her heart. It demanded a choice. It demanded honesty. Lyra closed her eyes, feeling the weight of every step she had taken, every fear she had faced, every lesson the keep had taught her. She understood now that love was not merely desire, nor was it only safety. Love was courage, trust, and the willingness to stand in the storm together. When she opened her eyes, Rydian and Kaelin were waiting, silent, expectant. The wind tugged at their cloaks, carrying the scent of the mountains and the echo of battles past. I choose, Lyra said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her heart. She stepped toward Rydian, hand outstretched. I choose the path we can build together, trust, courage, and shared strength. The mark brought us together, but it is my heart that binds us now. Kaelin, I will not forget what you have done for me, but my place is here, with him. Kaelin's expression was unreadable at first, then softened. He stepped back, the shadow that had accompanied him now retreating like a tide. Then I understand, he said quietly. You have chosen wisely. The mark cannot force the heart, only illuminate the paths before it. I will go, leaving this place in your hands. Protect her, King. Rydian's hand found hers, strong and certain. Pulse beneath her skin slowed, calming as if recognizing her decision. The threads of the mark dissolved, replaced not by magic but by the bond of choice, trust, and shared courage. Lyra felt a weight lift from her chest. For the first time she breathed freely, unshackled from chains both physical and emotional. The kingdom needed them still. The rival clans, though beaten back, would return if not fully humbled. Lyra and Rydian stood together on the balcony, surveying the valleys below. "Are we ready?" Lyra asked. Rydian nodded.
Together, yes. Your courage has shown me a new way to lead, Lyra.
You are not just my queen. You are a partner. A strength I did not know I could rely on until now.
Lyra smiled, feeling warmth she had never allowed herself to feel. "And you are not just a king to me, Rydian."
You are the man who stood beside me even when the world threatened to crush me. I trust you, with all that I am.
"Below!" the soldiers cheered. The banners of dragons and wolves flew high, a symbol of unity and strength. The rival clans, though alive, were watching now, cautious and wary of the power they faced. And yet the mountains themselves seemed to hold their breath. There was still danger, still uncertainty. But Lyra knew now that whatever storms came, she would face them with courage, guided by the bond she had chosen freely. That night the castle was quiet. Rydian and Lyra walked the corridors hand in hand, the warmth of connection between them stronger than any magic, any mark, any threat. The keep that had once felt like a cage now felt like home, a home they would build together. The moon rose high over the mountains, silver and serene, casting light across stone walls and banners. Lyra leaned against Rydian, feeling the steady strength of his presence. The mark was gone, yet its lessons remained: courage, trust, and the power to choose one's path. From the shadows of the distant forest, Kalen watched one last time. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held respect, acceptance, and perhaps a trace of longing. He turned, disappearing into the mist, leaving the kingdom and the queen to their chosen destiny.
In the weeks that followed, Lyra stepped fully into her role as queen.
She learned the art of governance, the strategy of war, and the subtle ways of diplomacy. Soldiers, nobles, and even common folk came to respect her courage, her wisdom, and the quiet strength she carried. Rydian was always at her side, not as a master, not as a ruler demanding obedience, but as a partner. Their bond deepened with each day, built not only on attraction, but on trust, shared purpose, and the trials they had faced together. One evening, standing on the highest tower, Lyra looked out over the mountains. The sun was setting, painting the peaks with fire and gold. But she could see the rivers winding through the valleys, the forests dark and alive, and the distant banners of rival clans lowered in recognition of the strength she and Rydian represented.
You see the kingdom, Rydian said softly, his hand brushing hers.
It is yours as much as mine, and together we will protect it.
December. Together we will face whatever comes. Lyra nodded, feeling the warmth of the mark's memory within her, no longer a pulse of magic, but a reminder of courage, choice, and the power to shape her own destiny.
Yes, she said, smiling.
Together. The wind carried their voices through the mountains, strong and clear. The past, with all its fear and shadows, was behind them.
The future was theirs to build, shaped not by destiny alone, but by love, courage, and the bonds they had chosen.
And somewhere, in the quiet of the mountains, the echoes of the mark lingered, a faint reminder of the storms they had faced, the choices they had made, and the courage that had guided them to this moment. Lyra let out a deep breath, feeling the weight of the crown, the bond, and the future settle on her shoulders. She was no longer a prisoner of fate, no longer bound by fear. She was queen. She was brave, and she had chosen her path. The mountains whispered around her. And for the first time she smiled fully, without doubt, without fear. The storms had passed.
The chains had been broken. The heart had chosen, and in that choice, she had found freedom, love, and redemption.
The Alpha King's queen had risen.